Afternoon again, everyone. Mike here from Infinity Air Heating and Cooling again, and we just discussed how to set up for brazing and how to trickle your nitrogen and get ready to braze properly, and what to do with all that. So if you're just tuning in for the first time, you want to refresh your memory or whatever, you can check out that video before you watch this one. That's right before this video. So now we're going to braze and show you how to braze correctly. So we have Silphos 15. This is the good stuff to use. I don't recommend really using anything else. There's a reason why this costs what it costs and nothing else does. And it's not just because it's a Cadillac, it's because it's what works. So sometimes it is just because it's a Cadillac. This is not one of them. So we're going to braze this joint right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up our torch tip, set up our torches to do just that. Now we have a liquid line and a suction line. Obviously they're two different sizes, so they're definitely going to take different heats. So you can use the same heat if you wish. One's just going to happen a lot faster than the other, but I like to dial it up and down a little bit just to make things better. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on a little bit of acetylene and then just a little bit of oxygen at the same time, even though some people tell you not to. But as you can see, when I do that, it turns the fire right on without having all those parachuters. I'm not really into parachuters. So here we're going to dial this down a little bit. Now some people will tell you you want it to be totally silent and not hear it, but I've seen a lot of leaks by doing that. So what I go for is you do hear some sound, and it's not super loud, but loud enough to hear it. And the phone itself really isn't picking it up. What we want to see here, but let's see if I can actually just get this out here a little bit. So what you should see is you should see that super rich, deep, bright blue, the brighter color, a quarter to a half an inch of that. The rest of it, is what the flame is shooting out. But you can see a quarter to a half an inch of that deep, bright blue is what you want to see when you braze. So, let me get this back over here. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and get some heat on this thing. So you want to heat the fitting, okay? Heat the fitting well without heating the pipe too much, but you got to have the pipe hot enough, obviously. But we're going to heat the fitting that we want the braze to go into, because you want the braze to go inside that fitting. You want it to liquefy. And don't be afraid to take a couple touches. Just touch it a couple times. And so that way you can start to see when that's going to start to melt. Because obviously it's got to liquefy and it's got to get hot. If you get it too hot, you will definitely very easily just melt a hole right through the pipe. You don't want to do that. So we're going to get some heat on this thing as you start to see it liquefy, which I guess you're not going to see it too well on the phone. There we go, that's a little better. And yeah, it's good and hot. And you'll see it just liquefy right into it and go right through it. So it'll get pretty reasonably red, but not like super duper cherry red. Because if you get it really super cherry red, then what'll happen is it's overheated. And when you overheat it, it'll start to turn purple, and it'll become a whole nother ordeal where the braze won't stick to it anymore. Won't do anything any good, and it won't work right. So that's the basic idea behind that, and how easy that was. As you can see, we did it without melting all the paint off of the thing as well. So I did that on purpose that way without ragging that off, but you can always apply a rag, around this as well, the black here, just to protect it. So because it's just paint, you don't want to melt the paint off of it because then it'll rust. So, but we did it without doing any of that and didn't melt all the paint off there because we had the right heat. So the other thing you do is you take your rag and you know, cold wet rag once you're done, and you can set that on there and let it just cool down a little bit. The one thing I can definitely tell you that I would not recommend doing, that I do see sometimes, is taking cold water and pouring cold water directly onto where you just brazed. That's a pretty bad idea because of expansion and shrinktion. When you heat up metal, it will obviously expand, and if you pour cold water on there, it will rapidly shrink. And when it shrinks rapidly like that, it can cause it to crack. It'll crack the braze because obviously it's cooling down so fast. That I've seen that happen. So I just use a cold wet rag and, you know, wipe it around it pretty good. It cools right down. Once you do that, now you can just grab the pipe, and it only takes a couple 20-30 seconds and you're good to go. So not like the cold water really benefits you anyway. So this is what you want to see when you're done. Is very nice, smooth, even braze. See, there's zero chunk, zero really anything. I mean, that's like one with the pipe. You can see just how smooth that has become. There's like no lip at all where a braze starts and stops. So what that does is that liquefies that braze well at that right heat, and it will pull that all the way up into that fitting and really seal these fittings together to become one. If it's chunky, you know, your heat was not hot enough, and that chunkiness won't obviously go in those cracks, and so some wiggling around and whatnot and pressures a lot will cause micro leaks. That will definitely happen. Like I said, if it's too hot, the pipe will get all purple and turn super bright cherry red, and then, you know, you either melt a hole through it, or as it gets purple, now the braze won't stick to it very well, and you know, problems with that as well. So it's really nice, really smooth, really pretty, and most of all, as you can tell, see how I can wipe on the pipe, and you see the rag. Look how perfectly clean the rag is, because there was no carbon flaking. Says we don't want to oxidize the pipe. When you braze, you heat the pipe up a lot more than when you just basic solder. When you heat the pipe up that much, you heat it up to where it oxidizes. When it oxidizes, creates all that carbon flaking, and that carbon flaking flakes off inside the pipe as well as on the outside of the pipe when you wipe it, and that will clog things up and, you know, taint your refrigerant. So it's very important to do it correctly. I've seen way too often lately where it is not being done. People are not brazing. They're not doing the nitrogen anymore, and it's so detrimental to the unit. It shortens the lifespan so drastically, and just they don't last. TXVs clog up. TXVs go bad, and in my 17 years, my 17th year in this, I've really only replaced about 2 TXVs in my life. And since I moved to the Carolinas here and started doing it, I have seen an insane amount of TXV laying all over the wholesalers' desks everywhere from warranty replacements. And, you know, I also see very little people using nitrogen. So there's definitely a pattern there. And I've studied it and seen it and then documented it and proved it. So braze with nitrogen, and this will benefit you and the customer so much in the long run. And really just makes the job a lot smoother, better, easier. It looks better, it works better. The pipe inside the pipes are cleaner, the refrigerant's cleaner. It just operates very well. So definitely want to make sure you practice that. And that's pretty much concludes today's lesson on brazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up all these brazes here and get this thing under pressure, and we can talk about that as well, of how to purge your system and make sure the system's being purged correctly, and you know, what pressures to put it to and hold and weight and whatnot. So that'll be another video, so stay tuned for more. And of course, as always, stay cool to infinity. Thanks.